Warning, the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. Now, here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
It's the Savage Nation. Lou Pate filling in for Dr. Savage. He will be back tomorrow and give you all of the insight and knowledge on the North Korean summit and what transpires there. But in the meantime, check out michaelsavage.com for all the latest headlines. Subscribe to the Savage newsletter, and it'll be delivered to your inbox. We have a lot going on. We're going to be taking your calls throughout the show, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. On tap, we're going to be talking about North Korea. We're going to be talking about the G7 summit and the backstabbing by Trudeau and how Trump's hard line is resonating around the world. We're also going to be talking about Robert De Niro, but not just De Niro and his expletive-laced, I feel classless and lacking in couth presentation at the Tony Awards, but also how the media how they are acting towards the summit, towards the tax cuts, towards the G7 summit, and are they actually hurting the Democratic Party moving forward towards the midterms and 2020? But first, before we get to any of that, in this news cycle in the era of Trump, there's always so much going on politically. There's always so much going on and a lot of great stories that have nothing to do with politics, which Dr. Savage covers often. But last week was the sad suicides of Kate Spade, fashion designer, the suicide of Anthony Bourdain, I guess you say restaurateur, actor, a television host, personality, so many different aspects, icons in their own industries, one in the world of restaurant and TV personality and traveling the world, another in fashion, her designs, Kate Spade's designs, loved by many. But the issue of antidepressant drugs and suicide come together. And Dr. Savage has written a column, has written an article that addresses this, because in this fast-moving news cycle, so many times these tragedies happen, and then a few days later, we forget about them. Yes, there's the headlines, the names, Bourdain, Spade. It's all there. It's like, wow, that catches your eye because everybody knows who they are. And then, but we miss the causes of these tragedies, the contributors to these tragedies. It's the salaciousness that gets caught up in the news cycle. People talk about it, they tweet about it, and then sadly, it's left in the dustbin of history as new things, in this case the summit and the G7 summit over the weekend, sports, the Stanley Cup playoffs, the NBA playoffs. People get on with their lives, and sadly, things are forgotten. And what actually causes not just the suicides in famous people, but the suicides in everyday people that you may know or might be related to that directly affect you, are forgotten as the news cycle moves on. And Dr. Savage has written a column, an article that addresses some of this, and a lot of it is not being addressed by the media, okay? Now, a lot of times the mainstream media ignores Dr. Savage because they're jealous of him, and he hits the nail right on the head. So I want to share this article with you, and I encourage you to go to michaelsavage.com and check out the article. It's right up there at the top on the left. Antidepressant drugs and suicide. And I quote, "This past week has seen the tragic suicides of two celebrities who seemingly had it all. Kate Spade, the iconic fashion designer, took her own life by hanging in her Park Avenue home. Later, chef and travel host Anthony Bourdain took his own life while shooting on location in France. Both deaths struck a chord with Americans as it brought to light the escalating crisis of suicide, reported by the CDC to have increased by nearly 25% in recent decades. While no reports established whether or not Spade or Bourdain sought drug treatment for their mental health, their shocking loss sparked a national dialogue on suicide, depression, and the prescription so closely associated with psychiatric treatment. I assure you, the mainstream media will not report the relationship between antidepressant drugs and suicide, although the correlation was first noted in 1990 and has been generally accepted since 2002. In 2016 study published in the British Medical Journal, researchers at the Nordic Cochrane Center in Copenhagen revealed that pharmaceutical companies were not offering the full impact of these medications in reports. Their research concluded that suicidal thoughts and aggressive behavior doubled in children and adolescents who used medications such as selective serotonin and reuptake inhibitors, had a frog in my throat there, and serotonin and norepinephrine and inhibitors, got that screwed up there. Even more concerning from their findings was that they determined that antidepressants do not offer prescribed results in children. Nordic Cochrane Center professor Peter Gocci said, and I quote, antidepressants don't work in children. That is pretty clear. In the randomized trials, children say they don't work for them, but they increase their risk of suicide. In response to this study, a spokesman for Eli Lilly told The Telegraph, and I quote, no regulatory authority has ever determined that Lilly withheld or improperly disclosed any data related to these medications. Experts said the review findings were startling and deeply worrying, stating that people in the UK were consuming more than 4 times as many antidepressants that they did 2 decades ago. Now, what about the United States? America is no stranger to antidepressants. Either in our nation, increased use of depressants by 25% in 15 years. I'm sure you know a number of people who run on antidepressants like M&Ms, but this is no laughing matter. Rather, an alarming moment for our nation as a growing number of us are beset by depression. If we examine the school shootings in America, in almost every case, these deranged children were on antidepressant medications, but inevitably, it is swept away by the drug companies before we can recognize these perils. My concern was only solidified as the media once again pushed the use of antidepressants in reaction to these high-profile suicides. Instead of recognizing the risk associated with antidepressants, a Reuters article called the pharmaceutical companies to introduce new antidepressants to the market. And I quote, a spike in suicide rates in the United States has cast fresh light on the need for more effective treatments for major depression, with researchers saying it is a tricky development area that has largely been abandoned by pharmaceutical companies. With more research pointing to the dangers of these medications, we would expect news outlets to warn the masses about these worrisome outcomes. But unfortunately, they won't. As I have maintained for years, we must consider the board of directors of major media companies and then check out the interlocking corporate directorships. Ultimately, the answer may not be antidepressant medication. That may be an immediate solution in a crisis, but it's not the long-term solution. I conclude there. That is written by Dr. Michael Savage, the host of this show. I encourage you to take a read of it yourself. Go to michaelsavage.com. It's right there at the top. It's Antidepressant, Drugs, and Suicide. Again, authored by Dr. Michael Savage. My name is Lou Pate. We have a lot on tap. Again, we're going to get to it. 855-400-SAVAGE. We are just mere hours away from the North Korean summit. President Trump is there. Kim Jong-un is there. He did some odd things today. He took a nighttime tour of the city of Singapore. Found that very strange, but also very telling. One of the main things that needs to be discussed here that he needs to be convinced of, is that he will be safe. That if he gives up his nukes, if he works with the United States, China, and Japan and the rest of the world and has the sanctions lifted, that he will not go the way of Muammar Gaddafi. He will not end up dead. He will not be like Ceausescu in Romania, who ended up shot against a wall. That was a revolution. It was different, but it was still a dictator who died. He needs to be convinced of this. And this is going to be a major hurdle, folks, because I'm not looking at what the talking heads are saying on TV. I'm looking at the optics. Today, Kim came out of his hotel And he has those, I call them North Korean bots, all of his security men around him. There must be approximately 20 or 30 of them. And they're all huddled around him like being on a crowded subway train. And he's just walking to his car. And you can barely see him in there. And this tells me he does not trust the security there. We're talking Singapore. We're talking the President of the United States there. Kim Jong-un is there. This is the biggest political event of the century, probably the biggest summit of our lifetime. You know, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. The security must be incredible. Singapore alone has incredible security and a lack of crime. Add in a presidential visit and everybody's pretty much untouchable, but he doesn't feel that way. He's huddled between all of these people. And if somebody wanted to try to take him out, because I think he's paranoid about that, he is showing that this is on his mind. He didn't just walk out and wave to the crowd, jump in his car, and then go for his nighttime tour of the city, which is odd in and of itself. It was like 10:15 at night there, and go for a tour. Maybe he wanted to see what electricity looks like, because North Korea doesn't have much of it. So it was very odd. So we're going to talk about the summit. We're going to talk about the media. We're going to talk about what's in it for America, what's in it for Trump, what's in it for the world. And we're also going to talk about how the media is rooting for America's failure in this. And if Trump fails, we all fail. And how that message is really growing stale. And how that message is not resonating with the American people. 855-400-SAVAGE. My name is Lou Pate. Again, go to michaelsavage.com. Check out the article written by Dr. Savage, Antidepressant Drugs and Suicide. And we'll be right back with your calls here on the Savage Nation.
Savage.
It's the Savage Nation. Lou Pate in for Dr. Savage. He will be back tomorrow. In the meantime, check out michaelsavage.com for all the latest headlines. Subscribe to the Savage newsletter. And if you would like to comment on Dr. Savage's article that he has written in reference to antidepressants and suicide, a historic show from last Friday, we will take your calls on that. But I encourage you to go to michaelsavage.com and check out that article, Antidepressants, Drugs, and Suicide by Dr. Michael Savage. Now, with the North Korean summit that is happening right now, what do you, the listeners to the Savage Nation, expect from the summit in Singapore? Will this be a win? Will it be a bust? What? Look at the media. Look at CNN. Look at MSNBC. Look at the papers. Why does the left want this to fail? I mean, think about it. And we're also going to incorporate the G7 summit into it. This seemed fine. This seemed like it worked out fine. Trudeau was shooting off his mouth when Trump announced tariffs last week, saying it was something about it disgraced the death of those who gave their life in war, which made no sense pertaining to tariffs. Somebody wrote that for him. But the G7 summit itself seemed to go well. Trump had that long press conference. I watched it Saturday morning. I was on the treadmill and I watched it. It was very transparent. It's like he didn't want to leave. He kept asking people to ask him questions, and he took a shot at CNN, and it was funny. And it seemed like they were in agreement, and he brilliantly did not criticize our European allies. He blamed the high tariffs on previous American leadership. I thought that was a great way to go. And then he gets on the train. So Trudeau bookends his tough talk. He's tough talking before Trump gets there, but then he's meek and demure when Trump is there, doesn't stand up to him. And then Trump leaves, and he's back criticizing him again. Now, the media is twisting it that Trump can't keep his word. And that's not true. What it was they came to an agreement. And then Trudeau went back on his word. So Trump's like, screw this. I'm not gonna have any of this. And got ticked off, rightfully so, because now Trudeau knows he's a darling in the media, and they're all just trying to make Trump look like he'll go back on his word. I even heard somebody say that, Kim Jong-un should be watching this because Trump can't keep his word, when they really know the truth of the matter is Trudeau stabbed him in the back. David Navarro said there's a special place in hell for people who don't practice diplomacy the right way. Let's play, before we even get to the phones, let's play number 13 here, Clint, Larry Kudlow.
He really kind of stabbed us in the back. He really actually, you know what? He did a great disservice to the whole G7 because they were united in the G7. They came together. And I was there extensively. I was involved in these late-night negotiations. President Trump was charming, good faith. I was in the bilateral meeting with Trudeau and President Trump, and they were getting along famously. And then we leave, and Trudeau pulls this sophomoric political stunt for domestic consumption.
I couldn't have summed that up better myself, because again, Trump's tires had not even left the tarmac on Air Force One, and there's Trudeau in front of him. And now there's that famous picture of Trump sitting there, his arms crossed, seemingly defiant, while Merkel is leaning over. May is kind of out of view, but she's there. Macron, they're all there. Justin Trudeau is standing behind him. But one thing that they don't show, that's a snapshot. It's a picture in time. What they don't show, if you watch the whole video, a second before that picture is taken, they're all being jovial. They're all laughing with each other. It's a very relaxed atmosphere. Yet they take that one little second where for some reason everybody wasn't smiling and Trump's arms were crossed, and they try to create a narrative out of that one picture. You know the old expression, a picture says 1,000 words. That's what they're doing. But in this case, that one picture misrepresents what was going on there just a minute before. So here's what we have on the table. We have Kim Jong-un. Does he want to prosper, or does he want to go back into the hermit kingdom? I don't think he really cares about the people in his country. It's all about him. But one of the things he's going to want to walk away from is that he looks like a savior to the North Korean people. That when American businesses and international businesses eventually down the road start coming into North Korea, they keep talking about McDonald's, but McDonald's, Coke, Hyatt, all of these places start coming in, he wants to get the credit for that. Okay? And as for us, well, we get a denuclearized peninsula and no more threats of being nuked. How China and Japan play a role in this, we'll talk about that when we come back here on The Savage Nation.
Savage.
It's the Savage Nation. Lou Pate filling in for Dr. Savage. He will be back tomorrow. In the meantime, check out michaelsavage.com for all the latest headlines and subscribe to the Savage newsletter. And while there on michaelsavage.com, check out the Dr. Savage penned article, Antidepressant Drugs and Suicide. I read it before, but it's a must-read for you to go over. Listen, regardless of whether you hate Trump or you love Trump, this is historic what is going on. You have a guy who was a businessman who went to Washington, D.C., and often, as I do on my couch, wonder, why does it take Washington, D.C. 3 years to get everything done? 4 years, 6 years, 1 year, where it's like, yeah, I'll have that meeting, and here we are 3 months later. So love him or hate him, the speed of Trump is something that is to be admired, how fast he's getting everything done, but the media doesn't want it that way. The media, they are so vested in him failing now, because they've been doing it since June of 2015, 3 years now. Media can only win if Trump and America loses. So with that, I ask you, what do you expect from the summit in Singapore? And do you think it's going to be a win? Do you think it's going to be a bust? I think it's going to be a win. I think the parameters have already been set. I think everything's been agreed upon. It's just a matter of if Kim is going to go off the rails at the last moment. And the aforementioned media, why did the media and the left want this to fail? It's truly an amazing phenomenon. But Trump is tough. I like what he did, and it was kind of overlapping it with the G7 comment, the G7 issue that's going on, where he did well at the G7, seemingly had an agreement, and now the media and Justin Trudeau are trying to twist what he did. Before we get to the phones, I want to play this clip. Lindsey Graham, number 10, please, Clint.
To every Democrat and Republican, you need to help the president where you can, not undercut him. Writing a letter telling him what a good deal it should be is good, only if you're willing to back it up with the use of military force. There's no way North Korea is ever going to give up their program unless they believe nuclear military forces on the table. So I'm asking every Democrat who wrote that letter and all my Republican colleagues to tell North Korea and China that if diplomacy fails, we will have the president's back. We'll authorize to use military force as a last resort.
See, what's basically going to happen here is Trump, and I repeated this, and forgive me for being redundant here on the Savage Nation, is, for those who have not heard, is he's going to go in and say, listen, we want you to get rid of your nukes. You get rid of your nukes, you get electricity, you get power, you look good in the eyes of your people, the economy will start booming, you get to be the celebrity dictator you want, you get to come to Mar-a-Lago, you get to go to the G21 summit, earn your way to the G7 summit. It's a win-win-win. All you have to do is give up these nukes. Nukes you will never, ever use anyway. You may threaten to use them. You may throw some rockets into the Sea of Japan, but come on. We know you have no intention of ever using these nukes because you do not want to die. You want to live in Western culture. You want to hang out and party with the girls, with Kim Jong-un and Dennis Rodman. That's what you want. So you get to be the celebrity you want to be. Give up your nukes. Your country prospers. You prosper. We'll guarantee you don't go the way of Muammar Gaddafi. And that's it. Now, if you don't want to do that, you're going to lose your nukes anyway because we're going to blow the crap out of you and you're going to be dead. It's as simple as that. So you want to go back to the old ways and lose your nukes anyway, or do you want to move forward? Be invited to the White House, Mar-a-Lago. I live a few miles away from Mar-a-Lago. They won't even let me clean the toilets in there. The thing that troubles me about the upcoming summit is NBC News had reported earlier today that Trump will not discuss the North Korean human rights abuses with Kim. To me, that's unacceptable. The human rights, people are in jail. People have died for no reason, simply because they didn't have his haircut or they disagreed with the policies of the nation, and they're gone or they're in jail. The pastor who Trump just had released recently said he saw the horror of what goes on in the prisons, and he saw the horror of the way the people there have to live. So it's really, I think Pompeo has done a great job. It seems like everything has been ironed out in the last few days. And I think Kim Jong-un is willing to really move forward because although North Korea has a history of going against all of these agreements they've made with the United States, it was the grandfather hardcore. It was the father hardcore. These guys were operating their dictatorship during the height of the Cold War. Now you have a young man, 34 years old, educated in Switzerland. He's been wooed by the West, so to speak. He's been seduced by Western culture. Again, he loves basketball. He loves Dennis Rodman. He loves American movies. There's an opening there. He doesn't want to be the hard nose that his father and grandfather were. He wants to be that celebrity. I keep saying it, celebrity dictator. That's what he wants. And Trump is offering him that. Is he willing to give up his nukes? We know through spy satellites that some stuff has been moved from the nuclear facilities. We assume it's the nuclear capabilities of building the nukes, the uranium and whatever else. But what he blew up there was just some ramshackle shacks. Looks like an old camp. So is he willing to truly give it up? Is he going to allow inspectors in, or is he going to make the dumb move and try to hide this stuff? Let's get to the phones. Russell at WABC. Welcome to the Savage Nation with Lou Pate. How are you?
Fine, thanks, Lou. I think you're wrong about leftists. I'm a leftist that likes Trump. He's a circuit breaker. He's going to give Asia for the Asians and Europe for Russia. So I think you're wrong when you say that leftists don't like Trump. I'll tell you who wants Trump to win in 2020. Schumer and Pelosi want Trump to win in 2020.
What do you mean Asia for the Asians and Europe for the Russians? What does that mean?
Well, I think you just said we get to a denuked peninsula. That's what North Korea wants. They want us to stop flying B-52s over them, which is reasonable, and their nukes are for deterrent. That's what you just said, right? They're not going to attack us. It's for deterrent. So they don't want the nukes. They want us out. They want one-to-one talks instead of six-way talks, which is what we were demanding when Obama...
Yeah, but here's the thing, Russell. He can't be trusted because he already threatened Guam, he threatened Alaska, and he's been flying rockets over the mountains of Japan. As I said before, China plays a role in this, okay? China plays a huge role in this because they are the puppet master of North Korea. The sanctions are hitting North Korea hard. The only place they can get goods and services are from China. Now, move on to Japan. You look at Japan, it is not an accident that Prime Minister Abe, Shinzo Abe, was at the White House last week. That was designed to show Kim Jong-un that big countries, powerful countries in your region are on board with us. That's why Abe came all the way to the United States to be at the White House for that photo op. That photo op was a message to Kim Jong-un. And now with the ZTE Communications Company, although they steal intellectual property from the United States, which annoys the heck out of me, China's president, Xi Jinping, said, hey, we can't put this guy out of business. We need this company right now. So work with me to keep this communications company open, and I'll work with you to keep Kim Jong-un, in line. So it's a happy medium. I don't like to give up the concessions of ZTE, but for you make it sound like I heard it. Yeah, you weaved it in there. Oh, B-52 bombers. No, he has no leverage. He has painted himself into a corner, Russell. And add in the brilliant stroke of genius, when Trump canceled the meeting, he painted Kim Jong-un even further into a corner. So he has no leverage. He has to give us what he wants, or we're going to bomb the crap out of him and get rid of his nukes anyway.
Want the same thing he does, and he did those things to get our attention. I think Kim Jong-un couldn't be what he is without Trump, because he's doing this whole thing to get our attention, and Trump is willing to give it to us. With Hillary and Obama and the Bushes, we would have been in the same deadlock we've always been in, Loop. So I just want you to know, as a proud American communist, I love Trump. He's a circuit breaker.
All right, one quick thing, Russell. You can't admit you're doing a back end there. I know you're doing an end around, but the media hates him, but now they're so invested in him, they can't go to his side, so they actually have to root against a denuclearized peninsula. They have to root against tax cuts, and they have to try to paint him as going against his word at the G7, which just isn't true. So, but thank you for your call. Let's head out west to Dr. Savage's flagship in San Francisco, KSFO. JP, thank you for holding and listening online.
Yes, sir. Thanks for taking my call. Listen, the tariff war was started by Trudeau last year about at this time of the year, because we're hauling, my company that I lease to, we're hauling like 50 loads a week out of grassland in Greenwood, Wisconsin to Ontario, loads of creams that were like $50,000-$60,000 per load, and that's been going on. It was going on for quite a while, and you had a few liberal farmers out of Ontario went to complain to Trudeau. And Trudeau slapped a tariff like over 190% on those loads of cream. And those loads got shipped to them, or we lost all of that business. And Wisconsin farmers and that company, Grassland, went to complain to Mr. Trump, which he was not to blame, because Trudeau broke the free trade agreement. And what happened with this is that Trudeau opened a can of worms. And now he's going to look into the softwood lumber, which is dumped. They're making their profit on the exchange rate. They could make the product at loss and ship it to the U.S. and make their profit on the exchange rate of money. So that's why Mr. Trump is putting that 25% tariff, because that's about the difference of money between Canada and the U.S. And Trudeau keeps the money. He plays with the value of our money, keep it low to have that business. And Trudeau never worked a day in his life. He was born rich, and he
right. Yeah, his father was very popular prime minister. But JP, was Trump right to say what he said about Trudeau, calling him weak, or did he cross a line?
No, he said the truth.
And listen, just so you know, for you and the other listeners to the Savage Nation, according to a release from Canada itself, they make almost $100 billion in trade with the United States. I mean, think about that. They're actually issuing press releases about this. It's pretty incredible that no other president has tried to reduce the cost that it's costing the American citizens in goods and services going to and from the country. Now he's coming forward and he's trying to level the playing field a little bit. We have an $800 billion deficit worldwide with other countries. And basically what Trump said in that news conference on Saturday was that they're kind of smirking at him, Macron and all of them. They're kind of smirking like, yeah, what took somebody so long to kind of come and question us on this, but it's one of those things. If it comes from Trump, it must be bad, even if it's helping people. But hey, thank you very much, JP. Do appreciate your call. We'll take a quick break. I encourage you to go to michaelsavage.com, get your latest headlines, but more so, give us a buzz here right now, 855-400-SAVAGE. What do you expect from the summit in Singapore? Will it be a win? Will it be a bust? And why does the left, especially the media, want it to fail? And in reference to the G7 summit, was Trump right to criticize and call Trudeau weak after Trudeau stabbed him in the back? We'll take a quick break. Lou Pate here with you. This is the Savage Nation.
Savage.
It's the Savage Nation. Lou Pate sitting in for Dr. Savage. He will be back tomorrow. In the meantime, check out michaelsavage.com for all the latest headlines. Subscribe to the Savage newsletter, which will be delivered free to your inbox. And check out Dr. Savage's latest column, Antidepressants, Drugs, and Suicide. It's one we read earlier today on the show, but I encourage you to give it another look if you haven't heard it or haven't read it already. Talking about the media, talking about the North Korean summit, talking about the G7 summit, said I was the NBC report that Trump will not be talking about human rights abuses kind of troubled me a little bit. As I mention all the time, and nobody wants to talk about the issue that Obama turned his back on children and women in Malaysia, famous for the sex trafficking there. The human rights conditions there are deplorable, yet he turned a blind eye to that and raised the level of Malaysia's criteria in the world so they would meet the criteria, for the TPP. So that Obama can get his precious TPP, he turned his back on women and children being sold into sex slavery. Where are the American social justice warriors on that? Now, in reference to the G7 summit, people are complaining about Obama's reaction, but it truly was Trudeau who lashed out like a petulant child, waiting for Trump to leave before stabbing him in the back, as Lawrence Kudlow caused it. Now, I have no problem with it. I'd like to know how you feel. Is this how we should treat our allies, or should we be softer? Should we be tougher? And the media, they're trying to destroy Trump, and the media can only win if Trump and America loses. But Americans are not stupid. They're waking up to the forward progress of the country under Trump every single day. And even if you were a moderate and you didn't really like Trump and you're looking at him, you're like, and you now you have a job and you didn't have a job before, you got raises, or you're benefiting from the tax cuts. That's what people are noticing, not all of this ridiculousness. We're going to get to Robert De Niro a little later in the show and how we need more of De Niro out there screaming like he thinks he's Travis Bickle. De Niro lives in New York City, started the Tribeca Film Festival, but boy, he lives in a cocoon. And I don't want to shut him down. People want to shut him down. No, we need this. What he said at the Tony Awards should be a commercial for the midterm elections. Oh, it's wonderful. I'd love to get De Niro on the show. If he's listening, and we know you listen to the Savage Nation there, come on the show, but watch the potty mouth. Frank at WABC. How are you, Frank? Welcome to the Savage Nation with Lou Pate. Hey, Frank.
Statement.
I think we hit your bad cell zone there. Call us back, Frank. We'll move to Sid at KSFO. Hey, Sid, thank you for holding.
Hey, thanks, Lou. I'm glad you're there today. Maybe I can get in a word in favor of antidepressants and psychiatric treatment in general. I'll try to make this short, though. I'll just say that severe depression is a terrible thing, and unfortunately, the road to recovery is no simple, easy road either. It's a hard road to travel.
All right, well, thank you for that. We appreciate it. We'll take a break. We'll be back on the other side. Lou Pate here with you. It's the Savage Nation.
Savage. Warning, the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. Now, here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
It's the Savage Nation. Lou Pate filling in for Dr. Savage. He will be back tomorrow. In the meantime, go to michaelsavage.com for all your latest headlines. Subscribe to the Savage newsletter and check out Dr. Savage's latest column dealing with the suicides of Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade and the ramifications of antidepressants, drugs, and suicide. You will find it there at the top of michaelsavage.com. We invite you into the conversation at 855-400-SAVAGE. My name is Lou Pate, and we've been talking about the G7 summit and Trump taking a hard line against Justin Trudeau, who felt very safe once Donald Trump was airborne on his way to North Korea to criticize him and really throwing a wrench into the G7 summit. And, of course, North Korea, the summit which is going to be taking place in, mere hours from now, and how the media just wants Trump to fail. And it's amazing to me that all of the good that Trump is doing with the economy, GDP hovering at about 4, expected to go higher, historic lows in unemployment for blacks, for Hispanics, for women. We're at the rate of 3.9 for unemployment. Tax cuts. He's fighting to get the funding for the wall. Got rid of the TPP, got out of the Paris Accord. So many things are happening, and now possibly a denuclearized peninsula in North Korea and the end of a 68-year-old war, yet the media just is unhinged. For those of you who don't pay attention to Broadway, and let's face it, there has not been much to pay attention to on Broadway these days. They had the Tony Awards last night, and they were going to give an award to Bruce Springsteen because, I don't like Bruce Springsteen's politics, but he's got a lot of great songs, and he's a talented musician. And his one-man show on Broadway has really breathed a lot of life into Broadway. So they couldn't give him a Tony Award because all of his material predates the previous year. There's a lot of rules. The material you put, if you're going to win a Tony for 2017, it's got to be from 2017. And his stuff goes back, decades. So they couldn't get him in for a Tony, so they were going to give him kind of, not a Lifetime Achievement Award, but an appreciation, if you will. Some would call it a participation trophy in liberal world. A thanks for bringing millions of dollars back to the Great White Way. Well, you heard about the expletive-laced tirade that Robert De Niro went on. Well, the big story of the night was supposed to be Bruce Springsteen getting this award and performing his song, and also the kids from Stoneman Douglas, the choir there, preaching about peace. Yet no one's talking about Springsteen. No one's talking about the money he's raised for Broadway with his show. No one's talking about the fact that he got this award. No one is talking about the Stoneman Douglas High School choir singing about peace because, we had Robert De Niro saying this. Clint, please, number one.
I'm going to say one thing. Trump. It's no longer down with Trump, it's Trump.
I wonder what the kids from the Stoneman Douglas High School, where the shooting was in Parkland, who were there singing about peace, are looking at him. We're singing about peace, and this guy thinks he's Travis Bickle. Remember Travis Bickle, the character that De Niro played in The Taxi Driver? Remember the famous scene in front of the mirror? Who are you talking to? You talking to me? I don't see anybody else here. Because at one point he says, I'm talking to you, Trump. He thinks he's Travis Bickle. It's gone to his head. And the reason it's gone to his head is because he doesn't have to care anymore. He's old enough, and he's got enough money where they can't ruin his career. But De Niro, if you're in New York and you're listening on Dr. Savage's WABC affiliate there, you need new material, man. This is old. We've heard you make this rant and rave many times. Get new writers. Do something, man. You are stale. But keep on doing it. I think what De Niro did last night on the Tonys was wonderful. I think it should be a commercial for the midterms. I think The Dancing Mayor should be a commercial for the midterms. I think Bill Maher wishing for a recession should be a commercial for the midterms. I think Maxine Waters screaming impeach 45 should be a commercial for the midterms, and on and on and on. Nancy Pelosi with crumbs, and you get the general gist. But that doesn't end. Mika Brzezinski, who's a nepotism hire over at MSNBC, couldn't get a job if her life depended on it because her father was the foreign policy advisor to Jimmy Carter. That's the only reason she has gotten her jobs at CBS. And now, as they refer to her, Mika on a shelf over at MSNBC, actually said this. It must be fun to have powerful people. I mean, her father's, rest in peace. He's gone now. But it must be fun to have powerful people in places where you can't get fired, even when you're an ignorant moron like a Mika Brzezinski. and what's his name? Joe Scarborough there, her buddy, they're knocking boots, whatever they're doing. It's pretty funny. He looks like someone put a cartoon, Beavis and Butthead. He looks like one of those guys. Number 2, please. This is the illustrious Mika.
I know someone who spoke to Donald Trump recently about life in the White House, and Donald Trump's biggest complaint was that he's not allowed to watch porn in the White House. So there you go. There's a little bit of news for you. He's upset that he can't watch porn in the White House.
What is your source of information on that? I mean, I know someone who knows someone who once flew over the White House. Come on, Mika. You're a no-talent little biatch who got your job because of your family connections. Quietly accept your paycheck over there at MSNBC. Sit there, look purdy, and that is your job. And, try not to get Joe too roused up there during the show. But this is still my favorite. In our montage of insanity here, as Clint called it, this is my favorite. This is a Democratic gubernatorial candidate named Alex Ross. As fun as it is to make fun of Mika, and as fun as it is to point out De Niro needing new material, oh, Clint, let's play it. Number 4.
Donald Trump is a vulgar, demented pig demon. And it ought to be the case that when I'm governor and you are crossing from Donald Trump's Washington into Maryland, you're entering the resistance.
Pig demon. Pig demon. Come on,
Donald
what
Trump
is this?
is a vulgar, demented pig demon.
Thank you, Clint. Pig demon. Come on. Mika's going to have to try harder. I'm porn in the White House. De Niro screaming F Trump. I pointed out before the show, we're doing show prep, and I point out to producer Jim that De Niro's rant took away from people on Broadway who work hard, and this is their night to get a Tony. But Jim straightened me out. I got to give credit to the team here, Jim and Clint, that these people in the audience, they don't care. They're lockstep in with what De Niro was saying. You heard the cheers. Clint, let's play it again. Listen to the cheers at the end.
I'm going to say one thing. F*** Trump.
Listen to that.
It's no longer down with Trump. It's F*** Trump.
I don't know who's worse, De Niro, Mika, or this guy that no one ever heard of and no one ever will hear of, Democratic gubernatorial candidate in Maryland, Alex Ross. It is truly amazing. But the funny thing, and I'm not mad about this. I think these guys should go on the road and visit congressional districts where, it's a coin toss as to who's going to win. And throw in the Philadelphia mayor there. Let him do his little soft shoe as well. But what this really means is that the Democratic Party has no message. They have no message for 2020. They have no message for 2018 midterms. It's truly amazing. Let's get one more in here. Number 5. This is Michael Eric Dyson.
We got a guy who gets up every morning and excretes the feces of his moral depravity into a nation he has turned into a psychic commode. And he is the bigot in chief and a racist in residence.
He practiced that one. He wrote it down. He practiced it in front of the mirror, thinking he's all ghetto and everything like that. And, of course, there's Nicole Wallace. Number 6, please, Clint.
Well, let me ask you, you know more about the Trump women, the Trump family than anyone. What do they do on a day like today? Are they just the most stoic human beings? Are they numb? Are they dead inside? Are they paid off? What's their deal?
Yes, and yes.
There you have it. This is the Democratic message. We don't have anything. Healthcare, education, the environment, what? We have nothing. It's anti-Trump, anti-Trump. I think I love these sound bites. I want these people to get a higher platform. I want the word to get out to more and more people. Okay, some people get mad. I say keep them talking. De Niro, I'll go on a cross-country tour with you. I will introduce you. Okay, I will scratch your back as long as you scream your ignorance from the highest mountaintop. Mika, same thing. Talk about this more. Go on your show tomorrow again and say Trump's bad that he can't watch porn. Folks, they just make it up as they go along, kind of like the Russia investigation. The blue wave that turned into a blue ripple, that turned into a blue drip, has now turned into blue... I can't say it because I don't want to get fired. Think about it. Major League Baseball plays with them, and they're blue. We'll take a quick break. 855, your call's coming up. 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Go to michaelsavage.com, and I encourage you to check out Dr. Savage's latest column. It's called Antidepressant, Drugs, and Suicide. You are listening to The Savage Nation.
Savage.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation. Lou Pate in for Dr. Savage. He will be back tomorrow. Go to michaelsavage.com for all your latest headlines and subscribe to the Savage newsletter. Talking about North Korea, the G7 summit, craziness at the Tony Awards, off unhinged celebrities and a media that can only win if America and Trump and you lose. So what do you expect from the summit in Singapore? Will this be a win or a bust? And why does the left want this summit to fail? Let's get back to the phones. Nathan, WFJX, Virginia. Welcome to the Savage Nation with Lou Pate. How are you?
Man. Hey, just before I jump into the conversation about the Korea meeting, can I just say one thing?
Sure.
Normal people of America, the average people who actually pay taxes and whatnot, we don't really care anymore what people like Robert De Niro have to say. You know, we used to watch his movies, we used to look up to him, but when it comes down to it, we know what's real, we know what's happening in America, and he can hang out in his liberal bastions in his little cities and enjoy his life and speak what he wants to. There was good men who died for freedom of speech.
I agree, Nathan. And you know what? No one should ever look up to an actor. You can be inspired by an actor, but to look up to, they're just regular folks like you and me. They are no better or they are no worse. They might have a larger bully pulpit, but, whether it's an athlete, you could be inspired by these people. You could be entertained by these people, but don't ever think that they are better than we are and use the term look up to them. But I know what you're saying, though. He does live in a bubble down there in Tribeca.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I welcome him to come, not to Northern Virginia, but Southern Virginia, and not to West Virginia either. Just come on down to Southern Virginia, and we'll cook you some grits, and we'll do the real Southern hospitality thing, and we'll talk to you about your feelings about Trump, because we voted him in. We love him. Anyways, I think with this summit, nothing's going to happen. I think that Kim Jong-un is buying time, and he's trying to make peace, and he thinks he's going to fool a lot of the world and fool a lot of people. But I think he's got something up his sleeve.
Well, then we just blow him up.
Well, I know, but the problem is with that is that when we do that, China gets involved, and then we get smashed economically, physically, every way you want to look at it.
That's an excellent point, but President Trump and Xi Jinping from China have a wonderful relationship, which is why Kim Jong-un, who really has no leverage and has painted himself into a corner, has to listen to his puppet master in China. So Donald Trump, I think most of this has been negotiated by the Trump team and Xi Jinping's China team, and then basically was told to Kim Jong-un, this is what you're going to do. I think it's different because when his father and grandfather were the hardliners, Nathan, that was during the Cold War. There is no longer a Cold War. And it's a generational gap, I think, because he is a nepotism dictator and there's no Cold War and he loves Western culture, that they are not going to go back on what they agreed to, which at this point remains to be seen or has not been made public yet.
Well, God bless America and God bless Trump, and I voted for him, and I'm very proud of it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Nathan. Do appreciate it. Line number 3, let's go to Chris at KSFO, Dr. Savage's flagship in San Francisco. Chris, welcome to the Savage Nation.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to make 2 points. Basically, just off of just how Kim Jong-un guy is and how, at least how he's seen or portrayed in the media, I just think it's just going to be a bust. Like, I don't know, that's just my personal take on it. I don't necessarily have any concrete evidence as to why I think that, other than just looking at the guy and just, just looking back a little bit in history, it just always seems that the guys are like that crazy tend to be that way until, they're put to rest or whatever ends up happening to them. So that would just be my general take on it. And then also I would like to answer as to why you guys how you phrase the question that how is it that liberals are supporting Kim Jong-un when he's like a socialist dictator or whatever.
Well, they're not supporting him. They're more just anti-Trump. He just plug in into this situation, but it's more anti-Trump.
Right. Yeah. Well, either way, it's pretty obvious as to why they think that way. It's they're taking their side in the team because generally speaking, obviously I'm not a liberal, I'm not a conservative. I listen to both sides and try to make as good as I can about the situation because obviously you guys have your biases. But generally speaking, from what I understand from liberals, they just are supporting them because they see the Americans as the aggressors. And obviously I understand history.
No, that's not about that. You're wrong on that. It's that they hate Trump and they don't want Trump. They're against the tax cuts. They're against peace in the world. They just don't want Trump to have a win. That's all it is. And I think you have your biases too. Lou Pate here with you. This is the Savage Nation.
Savage.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation. Lou Pate here with you, sitting in for Dr. Savage. He will be back tomorrow, and I encourage you to get your latest headlines from michaelsavage.com, and while there, subscribe to the Savage newsletter and check out Dr. Savage's latest column, Antidepressants, Drugs, and Suicide, addressing the issues that society and the media are afraid to address. But we're talking North Korea. We're just a few hours away from the summit. We have the G7 summit in our rearview mirror, but controversy swirls after Donald Trump left, and all of a sudden, Justin Trudeau put on his beer muscles there. There must have been something there. But he was tough guy talking before he got there. Once Trump got there, he was demure, and then all of a sudden Trump left, and he was back to tough guy talk. But why do you think the left wants this summit to fail? I said before, the media can only win if if Republicans and Americans lose. Why? They don't want peace. They don't want tax cuts. They don't want to deport illegals, all because of Trump. And in reference to the G7 summit, what was Trump right to say what he said, calling Trudeau weak, or did he cross a line? I say he's not tough enough. But let's get back to the phones. It's all on the table. Oh, yes, and of course, crazy celebrities, unhinged. De Niro ruining the Tonys last night with his expletive-laced rant about Trump. And as producer Clint pointed out, the Stoneman Douglas kids are singing there about peace, and this guy starts, he's yelling like he couldn't wait. He couldn't wait for the microphone to go on. He had this all planned. But let's go to KSFO. Helen on line 1. Welcome to the Savage Nation with Lou Pate. How are you?
Thank you. Well, I'm my slant I haven't heard regarding everybody emboldened. The term alpha male. Donald Trump is handsome, successful, all this alpha male, and I've watched these little sissy boys. They're like junior high school kids, grown up, who are in a pack, and they finally get to kick the quarterback. They get to kick the big alpha male from high school, and they're just nipping at his heels, and now it's to the point you got this low-life De Niro has been, coming out and saying F Trump. And so when you look at it in the frame of these little, sissy boys, as I say, just they can't bear the fact that this guy proved them all wrong, the whole media, and so this is how they do it. They're all in a sissy pack, just nipping at the big alpha male.
Now, are you referring to the media, the celebrities, all of them combined?
Yes, I am. I thought they've just gotten increasingly, it's a little pack mentality like junior high school kids. That's what I see.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Helen. Do appreciate it. Let's go to Ken, KSFO. Ken, where are you at on all of this with the G7? And was it did he cross a line when he called Trudeau weak?
Well, thanks for taking my call. And I am referring to the Prime Minister up there. This was my kind of flashback. I'm from New York. I'm in California now, but originally in New York, lived in Queens. And Quebec was a wonderful place to go for a long weekend. You could just drive up there in a few hours. It was a great place. Montreal, Quebec City, just wonderful. But I almost fell off my chair when I saw the Prime Minister talking there, looking very cool and collected in that kind of flight attendant blue suit of his there. Well, I think I had a polyester suit like that in '74.
They called it a seersucker suit.
Yeah, it looked better back then. The way he was talking about Canadians, we're so calm and we're so collected and we're so peaceful and everything. I almost fell off my chair. I remember the decades back there when the province of Quebec almost seceded because they were having such a battle with the rest of Canada over the French culture and the French language in the province of Quebec. It was bitter fighting in there in Canada. So this man either forgets his own history of his country or chooses to ignore it. Canada wasn't always calm and collected as he's kind of trying to portray it. And what kind of ally is he that kind of throws a wrench at the president as he's going over to Singapore to try to advocate for world peace? They talk about us ignoring our allies. What kind of ally is Canada to us doing something like that?
Well, Justin Trudeau is a nepotism prime minister, and he wrote in there on the popularity of his father. You have to remember, his father was very popular when he was prime minister there, so he kind of rode in on that coattail, and he hasn't done much with it. We had a caller earlier in the show from Calgary who talked about how, Montreal, Vancouver, and then the bigger cities, Toronto and whatnot, they love him because they love his liberal policies, but the rural areas there, they're totally being screwed by him, and he's not well liked there, and the economy isn't doing too well. It's a little bit of a roller coaster, but the whole global economy is. But he's only popular because of his father, and if you notice in his criticism of Trump, he did not bring anything to the table. He did not make any suggestions. He basically ruined the whole thing because it seemed, in my view, from the cheap seats, that everybody was on the same page when Trump left, and for some reason he came out and had that attitude and totally screwed everything up. Next thing you know, Macron and Merkel and May, they're all jumping on board.
Well, that's what one of my points is. They talk about us being a bad ally to them, but it seems like our allies who have been doing some pretty dastardly tariff deeds on us, how come the media doesn't report that half of the story?
It doesn't fit the narrative. It does not fit the narrative, Ken, but thank you very much for your call. Do appreciate it. I have a tweet that came in here from Roger who says, I only caught a couple of minutes. You seem unaware that the U.S. has a trade surplus, in capitals, with Canada. Also, Canada's tariffs are lower than ours. Did you know that? I'll tell you what I do know. The Associated Press has a story that says, and I quote, according to a Canada release, they make almost $100 billion in trade with the U.S. Minimum is $17 billion. Tax dairy from us at 270%. And there you have it. So if you call $100 billion some type of, what did he word it? A surplus, that the U.S. has a surplus when we're $100 billion in a hole. Okay, overall, the United States has an $800 billion deficit when it comes to trade tariffs. Let's go to line number 6, KAHI in California. Jimmy, welcome to the Savage Nation with Lou Pate. How are you?
I appreciate you. Surpluses are good. Trump is good. But what do you do when people like Bill Maher is praying for a crash rather than having Donald Trump as president? And if the Savage Nation is anything like me, then we are begging Donald Trump in his spare time to make a little bit of time for Robert De Niro, the on-screen gangster, the on-screen tough guy. But in reality, we'll find out, I guess. The reason I called, sir, is the Savage Nation, probably like myself, saw Kim Jong-un arrive in Singapore on a big China airline. And when I saw that big China airline, I said to myself, well, there goes the handler. You know, that must be who.
Jimmy, the puppet master, I call him.
Yes, sir. That must be who the puppet master of Kim Jong-un is. And last point I wanted to make, sir, we got this thing here going on in California where if I have a baby in my arms, my son, 18 months old, and I choose to break into the United States of America, if I choose to come to the border of the United States of America, a country of laws, and break their laws, we got immigration laws, we got criminal laws, we got child protection laws. Of course, when I'm at the border breaking this country's immigration laws with a baby in my arms, this country also has child protection laws, and they're going to take that baby away from me in protection of that child while they deal with me breaking their immigration laws.
Anybody who has their child taken away from them at our borders, and thank you for your call, Jimmy, it's on them. It's not the United States government taking it away. When you make the decision to come to our borders, you made a decision that if you get caught, you are going to be separated from your children. This is why I have no sympathy for all these people who are crying about being separated, or those who pretend to care about the families that are being separated. We'll take a quick break. We're going to come back. 855-400-SAVAGE. What do you expect from the summit in Singapore? And will this be a win or a bust for Trump, for America, for the world, for the peninsula? And what about the media? I mean, they have been trying to spin this. You know, why does the media and why does the left want this to fail? I saw on CNN this morning, someone was talking about, Trump wants a denuclearized peninsula. Well, then he's going to stop flying B-52s armed with nukes. Is he going to stop our Navy, who's loaded with nukes, off the coast from going there? You know, it goes two ways. They're doing whatever they can to try and spin this, and it's just a no-win situation. But look, we're in June. We're in the middle of June here. It's been 3 years since Donald Trump made that famous escalator ride down Trump Towers and into the history books running for president, and they just can't get over it. They want you to suffer. Bill Maher said he hopes there's a recession. If there's a recession, people lose their homes. People lose their jobs. Marriages break up. People get into alcohol and drugs because they're so stressed out. But it doesn't affect Bill Maher. This is another one who should be a TV commercial for the upcoming 2018 elections. He doesn't care. They don't care about any of the causes, but they're just so blinded by their hatred that they're openly just talking about bad things happening to people like you in the Savage Nation simply because they hate Trump. They want peace to not happen in the nuclear peninsula because they hate Trump. They don't want him to get credit. It's unbelievable. 855-400-SAVAGE. Lou Pate here with you, filling in for Dr. Savage. He'll be back tomorrow. And when you go to michaelsavage.com and you're checking out the latest headlines, you're also going to want to read Dr. Savage's latest column. It's called Antidepressant, Drugs, and Suicide. You are listening to The Savage Nation.
Savage.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation. Lou Pate sitting in for Dr. Savage. He will be back tomorrow. In the meantime, for all your latest headlines and to subscribe, to the Savage newsletter, go to michaelsavage.com. And while you're there, it's a must-read. Dr. Savage's latest column into the historic show from last Friday, Antidepressant, Drugs, and Suicide. It is a must-read. But in the meantime, we've got a lot going on. Crazy Hollywood, ruining the Tony Awards, Robert De Niro yelling and screaming, Mika Brzezinski saying Trump is sad he can't watch porn, based on nothing. They don't back up any of these things with any type of evidence. And there's also my favorite, Clint, what is it? There's a cut number. Let's play it again. Clip number 4. This is Democratic gubernatorial candidate from Maryland, Alec Ross.
Donald Trump is a vulgar, demented pig demon.
I think that pretty much sums it up. You don't need to elaborate. Let's go to WTMA in South Carolina, line 1. Lenny, welcome to the Savage Nation with Lou Pate. How are you?
Yes, sir. I'm honored to speak to you. The whole thing is like the art of the deal going up against the man who's never had to deal in his entire life. He's a totalitarian dictator, the North Korean leader, and he's never had to deal with anything. It's kind of like a great white shark going after a goldfish. So for Trump to take him on, it's nothing at all, okay? We hold all the cards, by the way, unless he really wants to commit suicide over there in North Korea, because and we feel sorry for, of course, South Korea and China and even the North Korean people. But we hold the cards. What really woke him up was the USS Ronald Reagan parked essentially in his backyard.
That'll get your attention.
What's that, sir?
The USS Ronald Reagan, that'll get your attention.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, sir. And I believe that did. The fact also that he doesn't have any dough anymore, and only 10% really are living well. The other 90% are living like garbage, and he's just got a mess over there. He needs Trump in a hard way, but it's kind of like Trump is kind of like oh God, what's that movie?
Well, let me tell you this, Lenny. What's important to Kim Jong-un is that he come out of this looking like a savior to the North Korean people. As I said earlier, I don't think he really cares about them. It's all about him. But he wants to look like he's saving the country. Not that Trump is saving the country. As you said, he has no leverage. And now the North Korean people have actually gotten their big dose of news. The state-run media there calling the meeting with Donald Trump historic. And the news covered the front page of the ruling party's newspaper. It was at the top. And the only item in the first news broadcast of the day by Korean Central Television, which sadly for many people, if not all people in North Korea, is the only channel available. So people are crowding around poster stands at subway stations around the Capitol to read the news, and they're gathering at noon in the front of the city's main train station to watch the big screen display images of Kim getting off the special Air China flight. But this is all they're going to get. If any news they get, it's always going to be pro-Kim, and everything is going to be good. Now, if Trump goes in there and says, listen, I want to make you look like a hero to your people. If you give up your nukes, we can do that. What do we care what the North Korean people think? So as long as Kim Jong-un is looking like a savior of North Korea, savior of the North Korean people, that is one of the conditions. Again, he wants to be the celebrity dictator. Throw in a visit to Mar-a-Lago, and he'll give you anything you want because, as I said, he's never going to use these nukes. He says he wants them for his own protection. The media wants to paint America as the aggressor because we have B-52s. We have, as mentioned, the Navy off the shore there. We were practicing military drills a few weeks ago. At the end of the day, Kim Jong-un just wants to be welcomed into the international community. The nepotism dictator wants to be the celebrity dictator. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. 855-400-SAVAGE. What do you expect from the summit in Singapore? You are listening to The Savage Nation.
Michael Savage, a host like no other.